Welcome back to Untaming Masculinity, the podcast where we tackle issues relevant to men and their journeys to reclaim their masculinity. I'm your co-host, Dan, and as always, I'm joined by our other co-host, Brad. How's it going tonight?
Oh, buddy, it's been a good day. Just kids were much more composed than normal. Had a good day. Not much really to report. What about you?
Yeah, kind of one of those days as well. I am prepping. I've got my president and CEO, two different people coming in from Germany next week. So we've been trying to get ready for that at work. So it's been a little chaotic. And then we're as a family unit heading up to Massachusetts for a wedding this weekend. So lots of chaos at home and at work.
Chaos. Gotta love chaos. Well, good, man. I mean, are you guys gonna go eat some fancy dinner, much like you did last time when your president or CEO came in from Germany?
With those people, yeah. I thought you were going to ask about the wedding. The wedding is definitely going to be a little more low-key, I think.
Cool. Well, good, man.
Our topic today is something that you and I have, we've had many discussions about offline, but we figured it was a good idea to hit the record button and start talking about it a little bit. And that is the concept of resiliency. Let me start with a real softball question for you. What is resiliency?
Oh, man, that's a good question. So the Oxford Dictionary version of resilience is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties or toughness, in other words. So you look at resilience and it's easy to think, okay, something bad has happened to me. It's my ability to recover quickly from that, to get back up on my feet, to get back up on the horse, so to speak. Now, obviously, the definition makes sense, but the application of it is a whole lot different. Because when the rubber meets the road and bad things happen, it's a whole lot easier to say, oh, I'll recover from this, than it actually is mentally or emotionally. And it's something that I think men struggle with a lot. What do you think?
Yeah, when we threw out this topic and the idea of just what is resiliency, the first thing that came to mind is not quitting. As simple as that. Is you've got a task, you've got a goal, and you're not going to quit. You're going to overcome those obstacles that come your way. One of the first podcasts that we did together was the idea of I shall find a way or make one. And I think that speaks a lot to the concept of resiliency. It's just keep pounding the pavement, keep working and getting it done. And I think that there is a definite lack of that happening right now in the world with men in particular that did exist, I would say, in past generations. I think about, my grandfather's generation, the World War II guys, that quote unquote greatest generation, and the way that they just got things done. I look at the way he did stuff, as simple as stuff around the house versus the way maybe we do it now. And they were just a resilient bunch. They didn't let anything stop them. They just found ways to get life done.
You think of those generations, you think of the generation that grew up in World War II and everything that they faced down. You think of the generation that stared down the Great Depression. And there weren't excuses. There was never this idea of, I can't do it. They, just like you said, they had to find a way to get through. And the one thing I look at when I look at society today and men today is this idea of compliance, this idea of giving up, giving in. How many guys do you know that'll say, oh man, everything that we went through the last 2 years has been horrible. And the second that they pipe up and say something about it or face some sort of adversity, they immediately cower. You think of how many men have gone through a hardship and what do? They immediately throw in the towel because it gets hard. And when things get hard, they don't know how to react. They expect the worst. They catastrophize. They assume that they don't have it inside themselves to get back up on their feet and keep pushing forward. I can't tell you how many friends that I have that, we talk a lot about fitness. They got married. They started eating a few extra meals, put on a few pounds, and then they decided one day, oh, I'm going to the gym. Within a week, they quit. Or I'm starting a diet. Within 2 days, they quit. And they go back exactly where they were. It's a lack of resiliency. And that stems from fear. And what that does is that emasculates men. That takes away their God-given power as a man and just throws it in the trash.
Before we get into building resiliency in your life, you hit on a lot of points there that I think are important to talk about, and especially the point of how over the generations we've seen a decline in resilience. Why do you think that is? What do you think has caused us to go from that World War II depression generation of men who really would stop at nothing to achieve their goals to this, for lack of a better word, pussified generation that we're living in now, that every time a roadblock or something gets hard, they just throw up their hands and say, well, I tried, and that's all that counts.
So we've all seen the quote, I don't know if it's from Jocko or whomever, where it was, hard times make strong men and good times make weak men. That to me is a lot of what's going on here. We live in a generation where guys aren't facing real adversity. Guys aren't facing a life or death situation. If you look back within our lifetimes, it's pretty easy to think of the last time when we just truly saw resiliency and strength as a country. Think back to 9/11, how much patriotism. I was a senior in high school when 9/11 happened. I remember thinking, if I need to go serve, if I need to go to Afghanistan, I'm going to go there and I'm going to kick ass. And that was true hardship. And that built and brought out the character of so many men. And I think since that time, the last 20 years, what sort of hardship have we faced? It's been a time of plenty. I mean, yeah, right now we're facing some political stuff, but overall, we have a good we've historically had a good economy. We've had very little to worry about on the world stage. And when that happens, it gets very easy to be complacent and lazy. And when you become complacent and lazy and you don't do hard things, sure as hell becomes a whole lot easier to say no when any sort of adversity or bump in the road arises. What do you think?
The quote that you alluded to is actually expanded a little bit, and it reads, hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times.
Yeah, I know I butchered it.
Right? So I kind of led you with that question, hoping you'd come to this, because that's exactly what I think is happening, right? We had those hard times. We had that World War II, that Depression era, and those men became strong men through necessity, and they created good times. I mean, you think about the post-World War II era in this country. It was a time of plenty. It was a good time. It was a time of growth. And then men did not have the need to be as strong, so they weakened. And now we're seeing the evolution of that in the hard times that we're in, relative hard times that we're in right now, because men are weaker. The good news is the cycle will perpetuate itself, and we should be seeing a group of strong men come out of this. But yeah, you're right. You were dead on in that our generation especially has had a very easy life, and we have not had to fight tooth and nail for survival. We've been given everything on a golden platter, and the American dream was always to give your children something better than you had. But while we're doing that, it's not because we had it necessarily bad. My grandparents, I constantly think back to them because they kind of, to me, epitomize what was the American dream. Their parents were uneducated immigrants, worked with their hands. My grandparents were the first to finish high school in my family. They bought a house. They started a family. My grandpa, and this is all I'm thinking about my grandparents on my mother's side, especially. But my grandfather was a sergeant in the Army in World War II, served in the Philippines, came back, started a family, bought a house. Lived the American dream. Was a welder for his entire career at Westinghouse. Retired with the pension, the whole 9 yards, and they lived that perfect life. And they had children who, my mom was the first one who graduated college in the family, and they perpetuated that life. But now you look at our generation, and especially the generation that we're looking to raise now with our children, in how much better can it get? We're not hard up. We're not living a hard, destitute life where we're scraping pennies together to put food on the table. We're not, for the most part. Listen, there are people with hardships in life. I'm not discounting that. But as a whole, society is in a very plush place. Without that hardship, there's no resiliency that's required to survive.
I mean, you think of World War II as an existential crisis. There were young men, 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds going off to war. Nobody knew. Their mom sent them off. Their girlfriend sent them off with no idea if they'd ever come home alive.
Nope.
That builds character. That builds resilience. You think of, even 9/11. If we go back to our generation, that builds resilience. You see those things happen. And what we've seen since then is 20 years of bounty, of just abundance to incredible levels. And what that does is we're in a situation now where people are lazy. You see manufactured hardship. This manufactured hardship doesn't build resilience. It just builds anger and animosity because what's your skin in the game? You're mad because of somebody's pronouns. That's not skin in the game. You're mad because of this, that, or the other. Now, I'm not trying to be dismissive of things that are going on in our society today. Obviously, there are some really difficult things. But at the same time, it's not to that level to where anybody feels that there's a real risk, where you are really down in the dirt and realizing that you need to actually build something for yourself and overcome a challenge or hardship. Somebody called you an offensive name. That's not the same as any number of things where you are down on your knees looking up and saying, how am I going to get through this? Having to make that decision that you've got to get back up. So I guess the question for you, Dan, is obviously we've lived in a pretty blessed generation, if you will, but have you experienced any examples of true resilience in your life that have fortified you?
It's tough to come off that conversation about how we've lived such a relatively easy life and then say, yes, I have this, huge situation where I created resiliency.
Right.
Nothing big comes to mind. I believe that in my life, there have been a lot of little things where resiliency has shown its head. Most recently, we keep going back to physical stuff, but most recently, we were part of a group that did a 75 hard challenge. And that builds a certain form of resiliency in you. I never totally bought into the whole, it's a mindset challenge, not a physical challenge before I did it. But it does. It builds a mindset resiliency in you because it's not about the workouts. It's not about the water. It's not about the diet. It's about doing something you said you were going to do day in and day out for 75 days. And there's a certain resiliency in that. There's a certain requirement to get up and do the work to achieve a goal, regardless of whether you want to, regardless of whether you feel like it, regardless of what obstacles may be in your way from a time management perspective or a commitments perspective. You've got to get the work done. And there was definite mindset resiliency built into that task in that journey. That's the first one that comes to mind. And like I said, I don't believe there's this large scale resiliency situation, but my life has been marked with little pockets of it like that have grown into an overall mindset or lifestyle resiliency that I believe I have now, where I can take a look at the larger picture and say, okay, I want to get there, wherever there is. In order to do that, I have to follow this path, and I'm going to stick to that path.
That's the big thing. I know we use a lot of big examples of 9/11 and World War II and the Great Depression. We don't need those catastrophic events to be able to build resiliency. I think the era in which we live now, there's tons of opportunities to build resiliency. When you think geopolitically, COVID, whatever, there are also lots of things that every single one of us faces every day that presents us an opportunity to build resilience and get back up on our. For me, the biggest thing that built my resiliency and kind of started me down the path was my wife going through cancer. I know we've talked about it a little bit on this, and it's not my story to tell. Obviously, I experienced it firsthand, having gone through it with her. But there comes a point, and anybody who's dealt with a loved one who's had cancer or has had it themselves understands this, that when you first hear the words, you have a tumor that's metastatic, or you have cancer, or however a doctor presents it, you're presented with this existential crisis right then of, oh my gosh, my wife is going to die. And you cannot shake that, regardless. You have to go through treatment, you have to go through surgery, you have to go through oncology visits, and all of those things. She went through all of that. She showed incredible resilience and character and tenacity and determination and hope. But the thing about something like cancer is it never fully goes away. She still goes in to see her oncology team and get scans every 6 months. she's going to have to continue to see them to get MRIs and CTs and ultrasounds for the rest of her life. Every single time she goes in, never goes away. You get this pit in your stomach thinking, are they going to find something? Is it going to come back? It's horrible. It's a feeling that we will never fully be able to shake as a couple, as a family. We just learn to deal with it the best we can. But I will tell you, when we were presented with that challenge, I was talking to a friend. He told me, because he actually he had a brain tumor, went through the entire thing, and it ended up being benign. But he sat down and talked to me about the entire ordeal. He said, when that happened to me, I had to make a decision. I could either choose to give up, or I could choose hope. I chose hope. I think about that in resiliency a lot. It's hope. We don't necessarily know how things will shake out, but I'm going to choose hope because I'm going to choose that there's light at the end of the tunnel. And if there's light at the end of the tunnel, that means that I cannot afford to be a nihilist. I've got to press forward confidently. I've got to get back up on my feet, and I've got to keep doing everything that I've got to do for my family. That's resilience. I think it's choosing hope. It's eschewing the nihilism, the defeatist mentality, and choosing to just push forward, not necessarily knowing that things will get better, but believing that if I continue to keep doing this and keep getting up, that they hopefully will.
It's a good point. And to a much lesser degree than, a cancer diagnosis, I had a similar situation in my life where you have to choose hope. So and this is, again, I'm not comparing this at all to a cancer diagnosis, but it's the same mindset. 2017, I had one of my shoulders, I had a rotator cuff surgery. And anybody who's had that knows that is not something you bounce back from quickly. I had the surgery in beginning of November, and I was not released from PT until the following April. Worked hard through it, did the PT like it was my job. Everything was great. 3 years later, 2020 hits, bad fall on my mountain bike, same thing in my other shoulder. Now I'm staring down that same surgery. And sometimes when you go into these things blind, it's almost better because you've got this hope, this I don't even know what to call it, but it's just this ability to just kind of go, well, I'm injured, I'm going to get better. And you've got this positive attribute about it. If you do it the second time, all you know is exactly how long it goes, how hard it's going to be, how much it hurts. And I was really down in the dumps the day I found out I needed to have that surgery. But you have to choose hope. You have to choose that mindset. Okay, all right, I've done feeling bad for myself, and I'm going to fight through this. And again, went and did the PT. That was my job for the next 5-6 months, whatever it was to go through this PT and just knock it out and get better. And you come out on the other end stronger than when you went in. But it's about the mindset. I saw people in physical therapy who had given up hope, who were not resilient people, and they weren't getting better. They would go and they would just do the movement. There's a difference. You go to the gym, there's doing the movement and there's doing the exercise. They're very different things. You have to be willing to do the exercise, whatever that is, to get through the situation. And I think that the cancer, and to a much lesser extent the surgeries that I talked about, are good examples of doing the exercise, doing the work, keeping the positive attitude, and keeping that end goal in mind, and being resilient throughout the process to get there.
I'm going to ask you a question. 2 weeks, let's just say 2 weeks into when you started PT after your second rotator cuff, how were you feeling? Going somewhere with this. So
physically I was feeling better, but it was more mentally I was in a dump because I knew that, all right, you're better, but you're going to plateau here in like about, I knew it down to like the week. Like, all right, in 3 weeks, you're going to plateau and you're going to be there for a month and a half. And then you're going to make micro gains for the next 2 weeks. And then you're going to see a big jump. And it was almost dead on. But I also knew it was a weird situation, right? Because you get real down in the dumps because you're like, oh, I know exactly how painful this is going to be. But you also knew exactly where the intervals were to step up, and you knew where you were going to make those gains. And it was almost eerie how dead on time-wise it was to the first one. But I know what you're getting at. Yeah, I was really down in the dumps 2 weeks after that.
You were feeling emotions. You were probably feeling angry, pissed off, frustrated.
Yeah.
Maybe there was some fear in there.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, I've gone through that. I tore my ACL, and I mean, I get how it is with the long-term recovery. It sucks. There are times you feel that you're making zero progress. Your range of motion is not getting back to where you need it to be. The strength isn't there.
Or worse, you have a setback.
Yeah, or you have a
Right?
setback.
You're going through the therapy, and you're worse this week than you were last week.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there going, what went wrong? Did I re-injure it? Do we have to start from scratch?
One of the biggest things I remember when I tore my ACL is I had to stay off of it because I tore my meniscus and my knee got locked, so I couldn't bend it. I had to keep all my weight off of it for several weeks until I could have surgery. And when they took everything off, came out of surgery, started PT, the muscles of my knee had atrophied. And I just remember looking down thinking, how in the hell am I supposed to build all that strength back?
Yep.
And you really face down your fears in that moment. And people, when they're facing down some of those emotions, resiliency is built by choosing to harness those emotions and push past them. Yeah, you're scared. Yeah, you're pissed. You might be sad. Those emotions are natural. It's not an unnatural thing as a man to have emotions. As much as the lone wolf mentality guys will want you to believe, or the alphas will want you to believe, emotion's real. Guys are supposed to be angry or sad or frustrated or scared. But you cannot allow those emotions to dictate your actions. They're there. Okay, cool. You're scared. That can't stop you. Just like you said, I mean, you knew the second go round, the mental game was tough. You stared down a few weeks into that thinking, I'm going to plateau. It's going to suck. I'm going to hate it. I mean, I remember talking to you when you were going through that. You were in a tough spot. But you just kept pushing forward. You pushed past all that stuff and you kept pushing forward. And you're stronger now because of it.
Yeah. I mean, not to get too bent around the axle on this particular injury, but it's very frustrating to going from having some of your strongest points in life. You know, I was in the gym benching well over 300 pounds one week to almost 2 weeks later where I'm in PT curling a pink 1 pound dumbbell, you know? So it's humbling. It pisses you off. It gets you upset. And yeah, you can't let the emotions dictate your life. But I'll counter that with saying you can use the emotions to motivate you.
Yes.
To provide that, you know, and when motivation isn't there, to provide that dedication. Because I can remember a few times not wanting to go to PT and just being like, screw it. Like, I'm just not going to be back in the gym the way I was. I'm just not going to be, you know, the guy I was. And I would just sit there and I would use those emotions to fuel me and be like, screw this. Like, no, this is just hard work that I need to put in. And it's a tough thing. It's tough to allow those emotions to exist while simultaneously not allowing them to dictate your life. And I really think that that's where resiliency comes in. Because without that resiliency, it's very easy to let those emotions dictate your path rather than just having them be obstacles or tools to have you travel your path. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. I was kind of baiting you a little bit to hope that you would go in that direction for that purpose. Because we have these emotions. We it's how we respond to these emotions and how we deal with them. Emotions are part of how we're wired. I mean, a huge swath of our brains is dedicated to emotional response. So of course we're going to have to learn how to deal with that. And that's resilience. Is I feel sad, I feel scared. Okay, what am I going to do about it? Because it's that fear or that sadness and allowing yourself to wallow in it that can potentially destroy you. And it's so important to just realize that in those moments, when you're scared, when you're afraid, when you just don't know, that you'll discover strength in yourself that you didn't know you had. Mm-hmm. You just have to learn to apply it. And that does require a level of discipline. It does require a little bit of putting yourself out there. I mean, I think of guys in the dating game. I mean, I remember where I went to school, there were thousands of girls that were all being pursued by thousands of guys. And you'd see the guys who went out super excited to try to date, get rejected one time after another, and they slowly would just give up. That didn't ever serve them. They never ever really saw their full potential because they didn't get back up, learn from what they did wrong, and keep pushing forward. I can't tell you how many girls shut me down before I eventually found my wife But I will tell you that every single time that I was rejected or turned down or things just simply didn't work out, I learned something about myself that I applied to my life because I realized I can't give up. My end goal is to have a family, to find a wife, have some kids, have the house with a white picket fence, all that crap that everybody dreams about. Just because a few people told me no, that's not going to stop me from achieving my goal. It might take a little longer than I wanted, or it might not have gone exactly how I planned it out in my head when I was 18, but nothing was ever going to stop me from getting there. So what can I do to learn from these horrible experiences or unfortunate dates or whatever the hell it was to be better, to eventually meet my end goal? And I found that. And it's simply by saying, okay, I'm scared, I'm afraid, I'm angry, I'm pissed off, but I'm going to keep pushing forward and I'm going to use those things as fuel. Because ultimately, resiliency is incredibly important to a man and masculinity. And I guess kicking it over to you, why do you think a good man, an untamed man, if you will, needs resiliency?
How else are you going to conquer life? And I use the word conquer loosely because it's the only word that comes to mind. But without resiliency, without the ability to jump over or work through the hurdles in life, how are you going to achieve your goals? Because without resiliency, you're like water. You flow through the path of least resistance. And you may end up where you want to go. And if you do, I would argue that your goal wasn't high enough, because no goal that you achieve without hard work and without setbacks and without the need to fight for it is really a challenging goal. The concept of needing resiliency means that you've set the bar high enough that it may be unachievable for you, which means you'll run into obstacles and you need to have that ability to fight through them. So if you're not fighting through those obstacles, you're just choosing the path of least resistance, you're not going to meet your full potential. You're not going to get where you want to go in life. You're not going to date that girl. You're not going to buy that house. You're not going to get that job. You're not going to travel where you want to travel. Whatever it is that you're looking for, you're looking to do, and you're setting that lofty goal of, you're not going to fully achieve your potential in that goal without resiliency, because you'll never meet your full potential without having to fight through barriers.
100%. You think about every lesson you've learned in life, all the areas for growth. How many of them have probably come from good times? I look at good times and I think of vacations. I think of snuggling with the kids on my couch or whatever. I love those things. They're incredible. They're necessary to a good life.
Absolutely.
What sort of life lessons, what sort of growth genuinely comes from that? Yes, they're necessary. But did I become the man that I am today because I was chilling on a beach in the Caribbean? Nope. Ultimately, you think about resiliency and you think about hard times, and I'm always drawn to this quote. I heard Ryan Mickler say it on a podcast once, and it has stuck with me ever since. Bruce Lee, yes, that Bruce Lee, once said, "Don't pray for an easy life. Pray for the strength to endure a hard one." I think about that almost daily. I don't want an easy life. Yeah, that sounds crazy to some people, but if you think about it, I want challenges. I want growth opportunities because I know that they will refine me and make me the man that I can be.
Well, I would argue too that the comfortable things that you mentioned, those nice vacations, the cuddling with the kids on the couch, it's the resiliency to work through the hard times that got you those things.
Of course.
The resiliency to work through your career and get the promotion, get the bigger pay, and that kind of thing has allotted you the financial situation where you can afford the nice vacation with the family. You can afford the nice couch in the nice house that you and your kids cuddle on. You can bring everything back to the comforts in life are provided by your work and your resiliency in the hard situations.
That is absolutely profound and absolutely awesome.
It's that part of the quote where it says strong men create good times.
That's exactly it. Every good thing that you can look back on and truly enjoy. You think about how you have an opportunity to go to a wedding this weekend. You think about how you are preparing to go hunt. We're getting into archery. We've got some things in the pipeline on that regard. You've provided yourself those opportunities and those luxuries through your hard work, through some of the hard things you've gone through. That can be said for any man. Yes, there are lots of things to enjoy, but those things that you can truly enjoy are the fruits of those labors. Hard times, difficult times, trials, challenges, all of that are necessary for a man to grow and to become who he is meant to be. Because every lesson that you can look back on and realize that those were various turning points or various epiphanies throughout your life came through some form of struggle. Everything. And I would actually challenge anybody if they think otherwise.
Absolutely. So let's get down to brass tacks. We spent the last half hour talking about the importance of resiliency, what it is, what it can achieve for you. I want to talk about the guy who doesn't have resiliency in his life. It's very easy for you and I, who have gone through situations, we've developed resiliency, to sit here and talk about how important it is and how everyone should have it in their life and how it'll help you achieve everything that you want. But where do you start? How do you start building resiliency in your life?
Now, that's a great question. I think when we look at building resiliency, that is something that every single one of us has faced down at some point in our life. We've had to learn to stand back up when stuff gets hard. So I would say that for a guy who is oftentimes thrown in the towel when life gets hard, to look at times when he didn't and use that as a springboard to continue to stand up when things get hard, regardless of who you are. Anybody who's listening to this, no matter how down in the dumps they feel that their life is, has been resilient in something at some point in their life. Guarantee it. It's an impossibility that you've not been resilient at all. Look back. Think of a time in which you were resilient, what you did, how that felt. And then take a step to do something else. If you've got a really tough situation with your finances, okay, what are you going to do to do something about it? What are you going to do to change? Whether that means writing that down, whether that means creating some sort of vision, some sort of action plan, talking to somebody that you trust, find something in your life that you know that you can take a stand on and just go do it. Just try it. Try it once. See how it goes. And when you do that, you're going to feel an intense feeling of satisfaction. Keep it going. Is there anything you want to add?
I'm really glad that you didn't go with our old standby answer of go to the gym.
That is a good one, though.
Because that was one I was actually thinking about. And it builds on what you were saying, though. It's find one area in your life where you can make improvements. Financial, physical, career, family, whatever it is, emotional. Make a stand and solidify yourself that you're going to make an improvement. Make a goal, make a plan, execute on that plan, and achieve that goal. And you don't have to make the goal your 20-year plan. You can look at it and go, career-wise, something as simple as if you got a problem being late to work. For the next 2 months, I am not going to be late to work. It sounds simple. It sounds easy. If you have a problem with tardiness and you do that, I promise you that by the end of those 2 months, you're standing up a little taller. You're feeling a little bit better about yourself. Your boss has noticed. Your coworkers have noticed. And you're going, okay, maybe there's another place I can make a little incremental change. And all of a sudden, you're making little incremental changes in different areas of your life. And you're realizing that even though it gets hard, I'm not quitting on the plan. Because not quitting on the plan is resiliency.
Yep.
When things get hard and shit happens, which it invariably does, you have to find a way to not quit on the plan. And if you can do that in the little things, that translates into bigger things and bigger things and bigger things. And all of a sudden, you're not living in that little ratty apartment, driving the crappy car that's always breaking down, and you're eating, normal food for dinner. No more ramen.
There's something that I was thinking a lot about as you're going through that scenario. What's the worst that can happen? By staring down your fear, looking at a situation where some resilience is required, what is the absolute worst thing that can happen? When you think about that logically and realize that it's not so bad, it becomes a little bit easier to get back on your feet and try something different. That builds resiliency. That builds character. So I was always guilty earlier in my life of catastrophizing. It was always worst case scenario. Oh man, if I ask that hot girl out, she's going to embarrass me. Something's going to be ridiculous. You expect the most ridiculous outcomes, but if you really logically look at it, so what's going to happen? She'll tell me no. Maybe she'll say something to embarrass me. Is that going to ruin my life? No, of course not. I look at my job. I'm in a dead-end job. I want to progress. I should go talk to my boss for a raise. I should go ask my boss about advancement opportunities. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? Are you going to lose your job by doing that? No. They might tell you no, but if it's a good boss, they're going to give you an action plan, help you know how to get there. So I think what most people get so stuck on, what most guys get so stuck on, is this idea that everything is going to turn out horribly, and they always expect the worst. But when you really think about if you really process the worst that can truly happen, you're going to be pleasantly surprised that when you go into that situation, oftentimes it even turns out better than you could have ever hoped. Just because you had the courage, the guts, the machismo, whatever you want to call it, to take a stand and do something about it. That builds resilience.
It goes back to our conversation about fear of failure.
Yeah.
It's the same mindset, and it's really the same thing in a sense of, so what? Yeah, maybe the girl turns you down. Maybe the boss says no. You know where you stand now. And even in that worst case scenario, you've now removed the doubt of the situation from your mind. Okay, I'm not going to be going out with that girl. I'm not going to get the raise. I'm not going to get the promotion. Okay, what's next? Oh, there's another pretty girl. Oh, there's a bunch of jobs listed online. There are always more options out there. Trying and having the resiliency to fight back opens up a world of opportunities for you. Whereas if you just sit there cowering in your fear for the rest of your life, to your point, you're never going to get anywhere. You're never going to date the girl, get the job, make moves in life that are going to improve yourself. You're going to be in that same crappy apartment, eating that same ramen, driving that same stinky car for the rest of your life. Get over yourself. It's not going to hurt as bad as you think it hurts for as long as you think it'll hurt.
And any situation you are staring down, somebody else has stared that exact same thing down and overcome it.
Yep.
Like we said before, as Dan says, you're not special. They overcame it. Your house is getting foreclosed. Somebody's gone through that and come out on top. You find out that you have a terminal illness. Horrible, but that doesn't mean that you can't do something about it and make the best of that situation. No matter what it is, and that could be anything, somebody's been there before. You're not special. You can overcome it. You can make the best of a bad situation, and you can do so in a way that's really going to reflect positively on you as a man. And that, in so many ways, establishes your legacy. A lot of men think about legacy, what they want their kids, what legacy they want to leave for their kids, their families. I will tell you what, choosing resiliency is going to mean a hell of a lot more to them than, oh, my dad gave up when times got hard. My dad broke his arm, tore his rotator cuff, gave up on things, became 400 pounds, would never play with me when I was a kid. Do you want your kids to look back and think of that? Or do you want them to think of the time where their dad went through something horrible?
My dad's a scrapper. My dad's a fighter.
He's a fighter. He doesn't quit. He was resilient. He stared down the gates of hell and came out on top. That's the kind of man we want to be.
This conversation reminds me a lot of the, you've used the example a couple times now, the Tony Gwynn. Just how resilient he had to have been to get up there every single time and make that effort to get that, just a single. He wasn't looking to hit home runs. He was looking to hit singles every single time he got up. And that's resiliency.
Great at it. He was great at it. Yeah, exactly.
But he missed 100% of the pitches he didn't swing at. You miss every single pitch you don't swing at. You can't get a hit unless you swing the bat.
Just like the old famous Wayne Gretzky quote, miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah, same idea. That's actually what I was trying to think of, but it wasn't coming out.
I picked up what you were putting down.
Yeah, that's the point. You have to swing. You have to take a swing at things. You have to give it a shot. You have to realize that your failure is not going to be as bad as you think it's going to be. And you know what? What if you don't fail? What if she says yes? What if you get the promotion? That's the part of it that people always forget, is that there's always a chance of winning in these situations where all you think about is the losing. So take a chance on yourself. Win.
That is so true. It's so easy to expect the worst, and then you sit on the sidelines and never give a shot. And that can be said in so many areas of our lives. So many men are going to look back with regret because of the decisions that they did not make. There's a quote, is it from Teddy Roosevelt, where it's better for a man to try and fail than to not try at all. I'm butchering that, but I will find it. I'll put it in the show notes.
I think that was definitely a paraphrase of what he said. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's so much better to go into that arena, give it everything you've got. And if you come out, you fail, at least you know you tried. At least you know you did your best. It's the man who didn't try who's going to sit on his deathbed and be filled with regret. It's the man who's chosen not to be resilient, chosen to be scared, afraid, angry, bitter, resentful. That's the man who's going to be filled with regret. The worst case scenario is not, I'm going to do this and something horrible is going to happen. The worst case scenario is doing nothing.
I don't know that I have much more to add to that.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Good chat. That's a good conversation. I think we pretty passionate about that one. Got going.
Yeah. Resiliency is one of those things where once you get it, or once you see the power of it, you embrace it. And that's not to say you don't fall down and you don't have fears. I'm sure you do. I know I do. You still have situations where you get in your head and you start to question yourself and you start to doubt yourself. But it's something that grows upon itself. And as you experience resiliency and as you experience the power of resiliency, you develop more. And you develop the ability to move forward with it and achieve more. And that's why you see high achieving men who are able to fail and it seems as if they don't care and they just move on to the next thing. And it's not because they don't care. It's because they understand that failure is part of life. And whether you see it or not, they're learning from that. And they're taking that knowledge in the next step and utilizing that knowledge so that they have a better chance of success as they move forward with the next adventure, with the next tough choice, with the next tough journey. And that's really what resiliency is and where the power of it lies.
So I was looking forward.
Yeah. So great conversation, as always. We appreciate everyone who's been listening so far. And we're going to ask you to pay the fee this time. We don't charge. What we're going to ask you to do is, we don't charge for this at all. This is something that Brad and I love doing and providing for you. But we're going to ask you guys to pay the fee by spreading the word. Put us up on social media, share us, like us, tell your friends about us, give us a 5-star rating and review in your podcast player. Allow us to be seen and heard by more men. That's the only way that we can get this word out and that we can help other men become more resilient and better their lives.
We've got some exciting things in the pipeline that we're going to talk to you guys about when the time is right. But just echo Dan's point, get the word out there. We love the reviews. We love the feedback. We love the engagement that we've gotten to this point. We really want this to get out. It's important that men know what they're capable of.
Brad, appreciate you, man. As always, good conversation. To all the fellows who are listening, thank you very much. We appreciate you, and we will talk to you next week.